got pointed over to Pembroke College. You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. One other thing, I didn't want to take the time because I knew that Helen had a lot of places to get us to. But one of the most significant things that happened where you were standing at the front of Christ Church and across at Pembroke College, there in that Christ Church is where John and Charles Wesley were students. Across at Pembroke College, as I mentioned to you, is where Whitefield was, and there he was a servitor. A servitor was a poor person who got to the college but could not afford to be there. So basically the servitor worked for 3 to 5 regular students, polishing boots, cleaning clothes, even sometimes doing some of their assignments. And it was a very lowly position, but Whitefield embraced it in order to get to college. They were not allowed to eat with the other students. Only one time during the year were they allowed to take communion with the other students. But there was one student who reached out to Whitefield. His name was Charles Wesley. And Wesley began to invite Whitefield, who was a seeker. He had not been converted, but over the last year had become interested in the things of the Lord. And he invited him to something that came to be known as the Holy Club. They would meet at Pembroke College, they would meet at Christ Church, they would meet at other places, wherever they were allowed to get a room, and they all got into a very strict regimen. Fasting every Friday and Saturday, taking communion once a week, doing Bible studies together, extended prayers together, and then periodic fasts beyond Fridays and Saturdays. It actually got Whitefield very weak, the regimen, but he stayed with it for various reasons. Now clearly these men were interested in spiritual things, but they were trapped in the notion that it was by doing such acts and works that you could earn your salvation. But Whitefield and Wesley began to read and discover some of the books in the library from the Reformation, which had been 200 years earlier. And as they began to read them, it was walking around the areas where we were, where Whitefield became a believer over the period of a couple of months and put his trust in Christ alone for salvation. The Holy Club continued, now with a different focus. Instead of trying to earn grace, they were growing in grace. These became no longer merits, these became means of grace to grow. Lifelong fellowships were developed that even theological disagreements were not able to hinder. Whitefield, of course, continued on as a Calvinistic Methodist, while Wesley went on as an Arminian Methodist. The term Methodist was used in a negative term, as a negative pejorative statement of those who had become, quote, spiritually awakened. But that Holy Club was very much the birth of the Great Awakening. As these men came to the Lord, they were ridiculed, they were pelted around the streets of Oxford when they would walk to their places of Bible study. They were called Bible maggots, all kinds of terms were used to ridicule them. But they not only stayed faithful to the Lord and grew, but they developed lifelong relationships, particularly Charles Wesley and George Whitefield, in terms of their relationship together, which during a season of strain between John Wesley and I think we got to get around somebody here. Between John Wesley and Whitefield, Charles and George maintained their relationship. when Whitefield went to his first trip to America to preach, he actually was able to restore Wesley's reputation, which had been injured as he went to the state of Georgia and encountered some difficulties. Wesley, after his first trip to America, John Wesley, was converted on the trip back by some Moravian missionaries. One of the things you might enjoy reading is Arnold Dallimore's book, The Life and Times of the 18th Century Evangelist George Whitefield. It is really, Arnold Dallimore wrote for the Banner of Truth Trust, and it is really an extraordinary and highly researched biography on the life of Whitefield. So where you stood between Pembroke College, and when I was explaining that some of that to you, and Christ Church there, that was pretty much the birth of the Holy Club, which was really the birth of the Great Awakening that would come to America. So today we moved from yesterday, the birth of the Reformation in England at White Horse Tavern, and now we've moved here to the and then we went to the to where those same reformers that met at the White Horse Tavern where you went with me yesterday. They went to where we stood on Balliol Street and were burned for Christ just a little bit over 2 decades later. That's about 20-something years from White Horse Tavern to that place on Balliol Street. So anyway, hopefully that just tied a few of those things together for you.